Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al Peterson. I'm the outreach specialist here at the North Dakota State Library, and today's webinar is going to be on the basics of a book challenge. I'm going to start off with a quote here from Mary Jo Godwin. A truly great library contains something in it to offend everyone. I like to go off of that. A truly great library has something for everyone, but not everyone's going to want to read everything or even agree with everything. And so we do have book challenges across the United States, including North Dakota, as many of you know, that schools and libraries are increasingly becoming the focus of book challenges by community members. Sometimes these challenges can lead to very public and heated discussions within our communities. And as librarians, it's time to consider and prepare for similar local challenges. And this webinar will examine the basics of a book challenge, what steps are needed to take when you're facing a challenge, and how the North Dakota Library Association's Intellectual Freedom Committee and the North Dakota State Library's Library Development Department can assist you with those challenges. I want to start off with discussing two different concepts here. That a book challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based on the objections of a person or group. And a book ban is an attempt to remove those materials entirely. It's usually done by a government entity or a governing body. Now, patrons do have the right to raise concern or questions about the resources in a library. It's perfectly within their rights. And a library user with a complaint should feel confident that their concerns are being taken seriously. And book challenges are usually done with the best intentions, protecting the children, and challenges can come from individuals or groups. Now, common book challenges include inappropriate sexual content. Some are targeting the LGBTQIA+ community, such as genderqueer. I'm sure we've probably all heard about Let's Talk About It. Some are really challenging books on sexual content. A common theme in book challenges is quote unquote promotion of critical race theory. Titles such as How to Be an Anti-Racist, the 1619 Project is getting challenged a lot in libraries, actually banned in Texas and Florida. Ruby Bridges Goes to School is another one that is frequently targeted for challenges as a promotion of critical race theory. Some get challenged on being blasphemous or being about the occult. Salman Rushdie's book, The Satanic Verses, as many of you may know, he actually went into hiding because he had a death threat put out on him, and actually has gotten, not too long ago, got stabbed at a public event that he was at. And it's all over his book, The Satanic Verses. Harry Potter has been accused of promoting witchcraft and sorcery to children. Some books get challenged on the content, being offensive or racist language. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn has been challenged for years and years and years about racist language, racist concepts. The Hate You Give is challenged for profanity and anti-police sentiment. So, as I mentioned earlier, patrons do have the right to challenge books, but what they don't have the right to is to disturb other patrons' use of a library. They do not have the right to verbally or physically abuse staff, and they do not have the right to destroy library materials. So the steps you can take when a patron wants to challenge a book. The best thing to do, and it's really, it's a hard thing to do, and I understand it's a hard thing to do, but you want to keep calm. Particularly when they want to get into an argument with you. Take a step back, take a deep breath, try not to get defensive, and keep calm. You want to try to elicit the specific reason or reasonings of their concern. And you want to offer your assistance to find something that better suits their tastes and needs. These are all just steps that you can take to try to diffuse the situation. As a librarian, I did have a gentleman that was angry over, he wanted clean fiction, like Christian fiction, that wasn't written by women, which is, or have, romance, which was, a challenge. But he was upset because the book he got had profanity in it. So I did try to find him some materials that he was able to read that wasn't full of profanity, but still wasn't a Amish romance novel. And if the person does express that the book should be removed, try to explain that other patrons may not have the same perspectives. And if the individual is concerned about about children's or young adult resource, try to explain the parents and guardians are the major role in guiding the child's reading and library use, and we do not act in loco parentis. And if the issue is not resolved with any of those steps and they want to resolve it through a challenge, you want to make sure you explain the formal challenge process and the timeline in its entirety. You want to provide them a copy of the library's collection development policy and the resource reconsideration form. And you want to stress that no action is going to take place until they fill out the form completely. A lot of times when somebody has to fill out a form, they're going to walk away. However, if they fill out the form, you want to explain that the submission of the completed form will trigger a formal reconsideration process, and that document will become part of the public record. The whole time you want to be respectful. You want to keep directors, principals, anybody that's above you informed. And I really stress this, to have a witness if possible to the conversation. By having a witness, whether it's a volunteer, it's an aide, it's a colleague, it prevents the he said, she said scenarios that could pop up. And then after the conversation, you want to take notes. But just keep in mind that the notes may become part of the public record as well. So again, you want to keep the notes respectful. You want to make the comments professional. Now, some steps you could take prior to a challenge is that you want to have clearly written collection development policy and a clearly written reconsideration policy and form. If you haven't looked at these documents in a while, you may want to start looking at them. You want to educate staff or library and library or school board on the reconsideration procedure. You want everyone to be on the same page. The important thing here is that even though some people on the board may not like the material, you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page with the procedure of the reconsideration challenge. And you might want to consider doing some customer service training. Little plug for Niche Academy. There are several tutorials in Niche Academy about dealing with angry patrons, challenges themselves, material challenges. So I would encourage you, if you are looking for any kind of customer service training, check out WebJunction or Niche Academy. They have some great resources there for customer service training and dealing with angry people. One of the things you want to do is you want to quickly respond to the individual making the challenge. You want to acknowledge that their reconsideration request has been received. You want to restate the steps of the process and the reviewing of the material. And you want to provide them a timeline of the review process, but the timeline does not need to include dates. This is an important thing. If you say the board needs to review the book, that's part of a timeline. You don't need to give them that we're going to review it in 2 weeks. We're going to review it in a week. And you want to make sure that when you have those policies set, your consideration policy, do not put dates like that in there, because then you're going to be beholden to those dates. When you're reviewing a consideration request, you want to make sure that the form was completed by the individual with personal concerns, or are they representing a group? You want to look for the reasons of the challenge. One of the questions you want to ask if they've read the entire book or just specified parts. And then what actions are they seeking? Are they looking for it to be removed? Are they looking for it to be restricted? Are they looking for it to be moved to a different collection or labeled differently in some way? So you want to prepare all your documents for the board or the administrative committee. You want to include the book's title, the summary of the plot or content, selection criteria that's met by the resource. So you want to make sure that having this book does meet your collection development policy. List of reviews is helpful, awards it received, and a brief summary of the reconsideration process. You want to have all that information for anybody that's going to be involved with this reconsideration process. You also might want to include some circulation statistics for the title, including how many other libraries in the state or your area that own the item. And here's one what's really important is that you want to follow your library's reconsideration procedure exactly as it's written, even if it's outdated. This is why I stress that you want to review these documents and these policies. You want to determine if the resource meets selection criteria in the library's collection development policy. And then you're going to be deciding whether or not the resource will be retained, restricted, moved, or removed. Once a decision's made, you want to send a written letter informing the initiator of the challenge of the decision. You want to address the letter to the individual, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. You don't want to just have a form letter. You want to explain completely how they may appeal the decision, and inform them that, again, this is all part of a public record. You want to update workers in the library, staff in the library or the school about the reconsideration process. And you also want to be prepared for any potential open records requests. Again, so you want to keep personal opinions and emotional responses out of all these official communications. Paper and electronic documents can be obtained and viewed by anyone who submits a request through the proper channels. So this includes emails. And so you might want to review the open record policy of the state. You really want to reflect on the experience. You want to learn, is there anything that happened during this challenge that could be applied for our next challenge? Did you gather or garner any new allies? Is there anybody in your community that came out in support of the library? You want to look at your lines of communications with your civic, religious, educational, political bodies in the community, and whether or not you can strengthen ties with local media. You can also think about how this experience can be used as a basis for library advocacy in your entire community. And again, you want to analyze the reconsideration process for any weaknesses or omissions and create a list of possible changes that would improve the process. And if you need any help with writing policies or want a second set of eyes, an independent set of eyes to look at a policy, you can always contact our North Dakota State Library Development. Monica Struck is our public library specialist, and that's her email and her phone number. Tammy Kruger is our school library specialist. Again, they're there to help look at policies, maybe offer suggestions, and are also there to help out during a challenge as well. One of the things our library development department can do is they can contact Mary Susie, who's our North Dakota State librarian, on your behalf. Sometimes Mary gets really busy, and so if you've been trying to call her and you can't, you can have one of the people in library development try to reach out and get a hold of her. They can contact the Intellectual Freedom Committee of NDLA on your behalf. Again, they can help you with writing or updating collection development policies and reconsideration policies. And they can also provide training to staff and trustees on book challenges. Another resource, as I mentioned earlier, is the North Dakota Library Association's Intellectual Freedom Committee. Currently, Emily Rose from UND is the Intellectual Freedom Committee Chair. You can also find more information on NDLA's page. I'm going to switch gears here. And I'm going to share NDLA, the North Dakota Library Association's page. Right now, we do have a press release that is talking about censorship and book challenges. If you go down to committee, which is share your skills on a committee, click on committee. And under committees, you have the Intellectual Freedom Committee. You do have a direct link to contact Emily. There is a challenge incident report form. And NDLA likes to track the challenges that are happening in the state. There's also the Intellectual Freedom Handbook. The ALA's Intellectual Freedom Challenge reporting page. And well, that's last year's annual report on activities of the committee. The Intellectual Handbook has some sample guidelines, some sample policies that you can access. So again, if you're needing any help with either updating or writing a reconsideration policy or updating your collection development policy, there are some resources here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slideshow. I'm just going to leave this page up in case you need to write down any of these names or any of these emails and phone numbers. Are there any questions? If you have any other questions that come up after the webinar, you can either reach out to me or you can reach out to one of the library development specialists. Everyone have a great day. Thank you for attending.